Murders at Karlov Manor draft season was a fun one here on the channel, and new Karlov Manor draft content has unfortunately come to an end, but that doesn't have to mean that MKM limited content has to end as well. Over the course of this format, I ended up doing 34 total drafts and earning a 7-win trophy in 12 of those drafts, putting my trophy rate at a whopping 35% to go along with my 67% game win rate over the life of the format. So it is now time to close out the Murders at Karlov Manor limited season, as I like to do here on the channel, with a little top 8 of my best drafted decks over the course of the entire format. I have included 8 of the 12 trophy decks to battle it out in a single elimination best of 3 top 8 tournament, and after 7 videos over the course of the next couple of weeks, we will be able to crown what was my best drafted deck in Murders at Karlov Manor. Now, to help me with this tournament, I've enlisted the assistance of longtime friend, viewer, and patron of the channel, George, who will be playing on my alternate account to act as my opponent for each of these 7 matches. And today, I will be playing a Naya deck that was posted to the channel on February the 15th. This was a true 3-color deck featuring 7 disguised creatures among other powerful cards and rares. Cards like Topiary Panther and Nervous Gardener really held this deck together, while removal like Torch the Witness, Makeshift Binding, and Buried in the Garden paved way for an incredible late-game value to take over in the form of a couple of cases. This is the best Case of the Locked Hothouse deck I had all format, and Case of the Crimson Pulse certainly was no slouch either. In this matchup, George will be piloting one of 2 undefeated 7-0 Simic decks I had this format, this one posted to the channel on February 27th. This deck wasn't necessarily one of the strongest Simic decks of the format, but it was headlined by not 1 but 2 copies of Vannifar Evolved Enigma, a bomb that only got better when you had a backup for the first one. Cards like Glint Weaver and Out Cold ensured this deck could live into the late game, and double Projector Inspector smoothed out its draws. Drop a comment down below to let me know which deck you think will come out on top, and I'll see you in the match. Okay, so here we are. In today's match, I'm playing Naya Disguise. Lots of red, green, and white cards in this deck. We'll go ahead and keep this here, basically off of the back of Rebel Belt Maverick. For those of you that didn't see the previous iterations of this tournament, I am recording my face cam post matches here, as if in coverage style. So I'll do my best as a commentator here, give my best Marshall Sutcliffe impression. Playing against the Simic deck that has double copies of the Vannifar rare, so go to combat here, do things in the right order by attacking and then playing the creature. Not that I really expected George to block with the Tunnel Tipster, but here we are. See what the follow-up is. Evidence Examiner on 2 and no other plays. Okay. Pass it on back, and now I have to decide on playing Inside Source or Vengeful Creeper disguised here. I'll play the Inside Source, and it looks like he will go ahead and just counter that spell, suspecting the Evidence Examiner. So it can't block anymore, so we get in here, but, you know, I can't imagine it was going to be blocking too much anyway, necessarily. Plus, his hand might be good enough to be a little bit more on the aggressive side, so goes ahead and gets in here. Here comes Eavesdropper on our side. Has something over there for 4 mana at least, so not sure exactly what it is, but we'll keep on attacking. Can't think of any flash creatures in the format. And no plays. That's always good news. At least for us. Evidence Examiner, no triggers, attacks. Go to 15. He's got 6 mana here. Looks like he just uses it all for a Topiary Panther. Now, we do have the Makeshift Binding. It's not the most mana efficient thing, but basically neither is anything we have going on. So we're just going to get rid of the Panther and bash on in for 7 here. So that is not too bad. Lots of lands on George's side of the battlefield here. Disguise and no other plays as of yet. And passing it back with the 2/2 tipster. Okay. Don't like missing land drops on my side. So my option here is to cycle the Panther or to play Vengeful Creeper. So I go ahead and cycle the Panther, hit that land drop. Especially get the red for the case of the Crimson Pulse. And then I guess I can also play Vengeful Creeper. So, but I'm thinking about using Torch the Witness potentially, but I don't think there's anything valuable enough on that side for me to really want to use that. So debating on attacks here, I could crack the Clue, but it looks like I go for the Torch the Witness on the tipster, mainly to enable attacks here, because I can now attack with Eavesdropper, Seasoned Consultant, and Maverick and make him take 6, which seems pretty good. Even if he eats the Maverick here, which would be fine by me. So I'm thinking about throwing away the Maverick and attacking with both here, and looks like that is what I go for. And it's a Fairy Snoop. Okay, so that can block our creatures well now. So the question is, do they eat the Maverick or do they block a 3/3 to soak up some damage here? And it looks like he goes for blocking the 3/3. Maverick of his own. Bidding a land, but keeping the other one. And here comes Vannifar. That sounds about right. It's going to make it very difficult for us to push through this last 4 points of damage with multiple creatures coming back onto the battlefield through Vannifar's ability. Evidence Examiner is going to start getting more clues here. And this game has stalled out. So it looks like I could just play Consultant and disguise a creeper and play for the long game here. Pass it on back. Vannifar cloaking more cards, putting more cards onto the battlefield for free. And the case is going to have to go a long way in saving us here. Starting to peck in with the Fairy Snoop. Got enough blockers now at this point, so go ahead, play this, and use our case, draw 2 cards. Draw a land and a Greenbelt Radical. And I'm thinking at this point, well, Greenbelt Radical could be a way we can get ourselves out of this game, because it can flip up and put counters on everything and give them trample, which they have a lot of toughness on the board, but that is a pretty appealing next turn here if the math works out in our favor. No real need to attack. I could attack with Eavesdropper. They'd probably just chump with Maverick here. Okay, out colding anyway on our end step. So thinking about potentially getting in and putting the pressure on us, or just delaying our potential win here. More creatures. More clues. So right now they have a lot of points of toughness and the ability to flip up some creatures to potentially provide more points of toughness. Okay, flip up Vengeful Creeper and destroy the case before it starts getting us too much value here. And now we draw Escape Tunnel, which is interesting because that leaves lethal next turn with a face down creature. So I play everything except the Escape Tunnel here. And now our Greenbelt Radical next turn with Escape Tunnel is technically lethal. So that was quite the draw. I can't say I've used Escape Tunnel offensively like this too many times in the format, but this could be a spot where it works out. Okay, Projector Inspector for the loot. There goes Surveillance Monitor into the yard. So what is the last card but a Jaded Analyst? I suppose he just played that one mainly so can actually play the creature this turn. He only had 3 mana. Okay, dumping a Glint Weaver mainly for evidence examiner purposes, I would think. Gonna go ahead and put a counter, collect more evidence. And now they are tapped out, which means with Escape Tunnel in hand, this is lethal on board. Thinking about where to get in here. And it looks like it'll just be the Fairy Snoop once again. So we'll pass, flip up the Dog Walker, end of turn here. And now I will admit at this time I hadn't seen the line, but here comes Escape Tunnel. And see, I almost sacrificed it for a land here. I'm thinking about Due Diligence. Is there a way to get those kind of in? I didn't feel like doing the math with Greenbelt Radical here. So I do have the mana to flip it up. So I just go ahead and sacrifice the Escape Tunnel on the Radical. Go to combat. Attack with just the Radical because that flips up for 4. Actually flips up for 5, I guess. Double checking any sort of shenanigans as far as blocking goes before I make the play here. Go past blockers, flip it up. And that is a way to get out of a sticky situation against Vannifar here. So we take game 1. We are playing these matches best of 3 to eliminate any sort of feel bads when it comes to mulligans and mana screw, mana flood, things like that, just to give the decks the best chance that they can have against each other. So we're going to go on the draw in game 2. With a hand that really isn't great, but I don't like mulliganing. You guys know that about the channel here, and if you don't, learn it quick, because I do not like mulliganing. Don't like to see a Rebel Belt Maverick on 1, but here we are. And there's not much else we can do, so we'll just play the plains. In the event that we draw a mountain, we could potentially play Dogwalker on 2. All right, no plays over there. So now I'm thinking we don't have anything else to do. Unyielding Gatekeeper is obviously much better as a 3-drop. Now there's a chance we run it into Reasonable Doubt, which unfortunately looks like that will happen here, but we had such a slow hand already. I wanted to try to get a creature down. So we're going to get the Reasonable Doubt out of their hand. Psycho Panther. And now we get to decide which 3-drop to play next turn. Is it Dogwalker? Is it Radical? Is it Inside Source? It ends up being Inside Source here. I don't know if there's a correct answer as far as that, but Inside Source is what I went with. 4 mana and a turn 4 Vannifar. Well, I got George has 2 in the deck, so it's going to be difficult to avoid Vannifar in too many of these best of 3 games. And honestly, there's really not much else we can do. So now do we just play a 4/4, or do we just hope that Greenbelt Radical flipped up in the very, very late game is going to be good enough? And I went for that so that next turn I could disguise Radical and flip up Dogwalker. Vannifar, cloak another card, I'm sure. There it goes. And looks like no great attacks necessarily for them. So pass it back, find more lands, unfortunately. So we'll disguise this, flip up Dogwalker, and our hands are pretty much set for us. Yep, still nothing to attack here. Flip up Inspector and loot. Get rid of a land, sure. Tunnel Tipster and potentially cloaking the final card in hand here. No, not cloaking. So whatever it is, it's probably an instant or sorcery that they don't want to put down as a 2/2 here. An attack with Inspector. So I have Radical. I could just hold all my creatures, but I think a 2/2 for their 3/2 value creature seems like a decent enough trade for me, so I do make the trade here. More lands that aren't doing anything. Can't even cast the case and send it on back. Okay, Sumala Sentry. Still can't cast our own case. Can't flip up Greenbelt Radicals, so this game isn't looking great for us at the moment. And now here comes Out Cold. I did talk to George about this moment after the games, and for some reason he said he just kind of got confused on what phase and whose turn it was a little bit. Obviously, Out Cold's better to use like on our turn or on our end step. That is the optimal way to use the card technically. He just kind of lost track of where the phases were a little bit. So now I'm presented with an interesting decision. I can either play a Panther as a 6/5, or I could cycle it for Mountain and then cast Case next turn. Unfortunately, I kind of got a little overzealous and played my land already, so I can't also play the land and then cast or then play the Case. But I do go ahead and get the Mountain. This is something I could do next turn at least. And if I draw a non-land card, I can also solve the Case next turn. So that's not too bad. They don't necessarily know that I have the Case in hand. But I obviously would have much preferred to play the Mountain, play the Case, discard the Forest, and then draw 2 and go from there. But we'll still get that value here. I think this game is pretty insurmountable as far as the lead that George has on us here, so I don't think it's really gonna matter necessarily. All right, more counters, a 5/5 and a 4/4 attacking with both now, and I debate what to do here because I think my only out is some sort of Greenbelt Radical flip that somehow they don't block everything. That's really all I can see as a way out of this game. So I just go ahead and take 9, which obviously doesn't feel great, but here we are. And of course we drew another land, so we do have to discard it to the case. But the Case of the Locked Hothouse, that, my friends, is a card. Can play the last land here, and then now we have 2 cases that are both problematic for our opponent here. Still no attacks, but their board is looking mighty juicy. But now these 2 cases can go a long way in helping us here. Kind of come back into this game. But unfortunately, the Vengeful Creeper turns up and kills the Case of the Locked Hothouse on us, which was kind of our value engine in this game. Bite down on crime, full price, and I'm sure here comes the army. Yeah, I mean, I could make some ugly trades here, or I could just go to game 3. I think at this point, we did have a solved case, but like we were going to go to very, very low life total, and he was not going to lose very many creatures at all there. So I just saved us a little bit of time and head on to game 3. We get to be on the play this time. And we have a hand that seems fine. We can use Escape Tunnel to get white and then have a good amount of cards in hand here that we can actually deploy, even if we miss land drops. And if we do miss land drops, we can use Topiary Panther to solve that issue. Gonna go ahead and lead on Consultant here, as Disguising the Gatekeeper is the better value pick of the 2. Okay, 2 mana 2/2. Now I have to disguise, or figure out which one to disguise, and I'm gonna go ahead and bluff the attack here, because why not? See if he calls it. That looks like he does. We didn't show very many combat tricks in the first 2 games, so it makes sense that he called the bluff there. All right, they went this way. Still can't collect evidence there, but got the mana off and running. Case of the Locked Hothouse. A good card, but not necessarily in this situation. So I could cycle Panther and flip up the Unyielding Gatekeeper. Or I could just play a 4 mana 3/2, and that's what I lean towards here. Keeping the creatures back so the Consultant can attack as a 3/3 next turn if I want it to. Okay, disguise and pass it back with Reasonable Doubt up, and maybe cracking a clue if we don't play anything here. So my thought is getting to 7 lands is going to be pretty good. So I'm actually just going to cycle this Panther for a red, and then Torch the Witness can actually be cast at that point. So we'll play the red, and then I could flip up Gatekeeper if I want. I also just have pretty decent attacks here, so I could wait to use Gatekeeper on a Vannifar, but I think we're in the business of wanting to kind of get their life total a little lower here. So they make 2 blocks, and then we have to decide what to do with the Gatekeeper. So is there any benefit in flipping that up here to potentially kill some sort of creature? And I do flip it up to actually, like, save the Gatekeeper, I guess. I get rid of their value creature in Evidence Examiner, give them a 2/2. And then we save the Gatekeeper, trade off Museum Night Watch, get a 2/2, push 3 damage. We still have 3 creatures next turn for the Consultant attacking. There was a Riftburst Hellion. And not going to cast Torch here. So if we draw land, we can play the Case and play 2 lands. And then also cast Torch for 2, which is going to be pretty good. But he has 6 mana, so lots of things could come of that. Topiary Panther. That is something I could kill with the Torch. But getting a Case online when we know they don't have Vengeful Creeper on the battlefield is a pretty good thing to do as well. So I can't quite kill the Panther yet. I could do it for X equals 2, which totals 4 here. So I'm going to have to wait. But a solved Case of the Locked Hothouse goes a long way in winning games. Alright, Disguise Creature, which we have known to see Vengeful Creepers out of that deck. So we'll see if Vengeful Creeper does in fact make an appearance. Okay, attack for 6. And now at this point, I just need to prolong this game. So I just make the block because with the Case down, I mean, I have all sorts of value coming here. But then I think that back and just kind of being like, maybe I could just use Torch next turn while also disguising a Dogwalker or something like that. There's many options we have, especially with all the cards on top of our deck here. So I originally tapped 4 mana to potentially cast Torch the Witness, but I also realized I'll have mana left over, so I'm just going to cast Samala Sentry first and see what's on top of the deck, if I can find some more lands here. And then I see Buried in the Garden, which that sounds better than Torch the Witness to me. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And maybe we can find a land on top, which can also help us potentially kill Surveillance Monitor if we want to. And look, we found 2 lands. And a Rubble Belt Maverick. Let's draw like 5 cards this turn. And at this point, I don't really think Seasoned Consultant does it for us so much. So I just bin that, and then I think about casting Concealed or Torch the Witness, but I go ahead and just disguise the Concealed Weapon here. Again, that turn we drew like an extra 5 cards or something. So I'm going to go ahead and offer the trade with the Gatekeeper because we do have a good amount of creatures now. They take the trade, makes sense. And let's see if that card is in fact Vengeful Creeper. Of course it is. Always have the answer to our value cards here. So obviously going to Torch the Witness the Vengeful Creeper now. At least I think I am. That seems to be what makes the most sense. Yeah, so X equals 3 here, just to get the extra clue. Now we actually have attacks with the entire board because Concealed Weapon can let anything trade with the Surveillance Monitor here. And we have flipped the board quickly. Even that one turn with the Case of the Locked Hothouse went so far. Looks like they'll fall right into our trap. It's not really a trap. They didn't have too much of a choice. What can they do? Take, 9 damage and then die next turn, basically. So their entire board goes away. And we kind of get a pretty big blowout there. So that is probably going to be insurmountable. This last game, he unfortunately hasn't seen either Vannifar at any point. So that does gain 6 life. But something I could do is put a counter on the Sentry and attack into a 6/6. But let's see what's on top first. Another land, sure, whatever. Play this. I could crack that clue and also still see what's on top here. Alright, Krovod Haunch, that's a lot of damage. And then, yeah, just go ahead and play the Haunch and equip it. That gives him more incentive to block the Sentry here because, you know, next turn, the Sentry's going to almost just be lethal. So as bad as I'm sure this feels, goes ahead and makes the trade. And now we have 4 to equip to give +5/+0 to any creature we have. Not too bad. Alright, dig in with the Fairy Snoop. And a Tunnel Tipster. And just drawing all the cards that are good early in the game, but not super great late in the game here. So go ahead and just kind of dump the land and start equipping and start bashing. And yeah, like I said, the double equipment on the battlefield is going to be very difficult to get through here. Makes the block over there, has to take on board 12, but we're going to flip that and make that 13. And have at least 2 lethal threats on board. Draws a land, double land, and here comes the concession to give Naya Disguise the win against the Simic Double Vannifar deck. You can see the updated tournament top 8 bracket on your screen now, with Naya Disguise taking down Double Vannifar here today. Tomorrow's video will feature Gruul Disguise versus Blue-Red Izzet Satchels. Should be a good one. Hope you guys are enjoying this tournament. We are going to finish out quarterfinals tomorrow, and then next week will be semifinals and finals of this tournament. Thanks for tuning in today, and I will see you tomorrow for more daily draft tournament content.